Welcome everyone to this Flex Rental Solutions webinar. I am your host, Marcus Merritt. And today we're going to be talking about containers and packages, along with digging deeper into the structure and availability settings that differentiate them. We commonly list containers and packages together, but I think of them as two distinctly different things. Okay, so containers are the way we store and pack and ship our equipment, while packages are the ways to list equipment, their accessories, or multi-equipment concepts onto a quote with ease. Okay, we will be talking about both of these today. For containers, we're going to highlight on three key presets. Okay, serialized storage, serialized package, and serialized free package. Okay, there are some hybrid options that are combinations of these, but we will not be going over those in today's webinar. Okay, so now let's go to our live Flex site. Okay, so first we're going to start with serialized storage. For this example, we are going to start with this case of VRX 932s. Now on this we see that I have named this case -VRX 932 2-pack. I personally like to do this because it quickly helps me to highlight that this is the case for this item and not the item itself. Not a required thing, but I feel a nice system. Okay, so for this, let's go ahead and look at our presets. Okay, on this, if we go down here to our presets, we see that as a serialized storage, it is tracked by serial number. All cases or containers must be tracked by serial number because we have to be able to tell the difference between what is in case 1 and what is in case 2. Then we have unit container. That's what actually makes it a case. So we can scan other items inside of this item. And then contents available are set to yes, so that the items inside of this are still available for quoting, because we don't quote the case of speakers, we want to quote the speakers themselves. Okay. Now, for this, we'll see on this item that gives us a storage requirement tab. Okay. This is how we can digitally set the requirements of what has to go back into this case after an event before it goes back into storage, back on the shelf. Okay. So let's go ahead and set. Now I've stated on this that it is a 2-pack. So we're going to go get these VRX 932 speakers and add them as my storage requirement. Got 2 there. And then in this, we're going to say that this stores with 1 NL4 jumper cable. On this, you can set these requirements to be as few or as many as you need it to be, okay, depending on the case that you are trying to pack. So now that we've set these storage requirements, let's go and kit this case up, put it together. For this, we're going to go here. So we can do this by scanning open the case. We do this by going to the calendar page and then scanning the case barcode. Okay. Now I do need to highlight here that this is different for everyone. None of you will have seen this before. So this is the updated way that the content builder will be working in the future. It is more like a regular scanning screen than the current way the content builder works. You access it in the same way. It otherwise works very similarly. So we've scanned open this case. We've got it showing here red to say we don't fulfill the requirements, and our requirements are listed here below. So now we can start to scan those items to show that they are inside the case. So I'm going to go ahead and scan one of the speakers, scan another speaker, and scan my jumper. Now this one is a non-serialized item, so I'm going to say yes, I've counted, there is 1 jumper inside here. Now that that is complete, we see that our bar has gone to 100% and our other bar has turned green, meaning that that one is complete. Okay? For this, to close the case, we can either just click to close the tab, or we can scan the case again, and that will go ahead and close it. In the Flex 5 system, it will keep you in content builder mode under the idea you're just in the process of doing lots of content building. For this example, we're going to go ahead and close it and move on. Okay. Now, for demonstrating how it's scanned onto a show, we're going to hit that later in the webinar with the other items. okay? So that's the process of creating and packaging a serialized storage. Next, we're gonna look at the serialized package. Always the best example of this is an amp rack, okay? We're gonna go to this Crown V-Rack 12,000 HD here as my example, and we're gonna go ahead and look at the presets. Now on this, one thing I do want to note is I didn't name it in the same system because for a serialized package, this is the item that we will be quoting to the customer. And so we don't want to use that same system that I used for that case of speakers, okay? So going down to the structure and availability settings, we see here that we have the serialized package says, again, it is tracked by serial number, as all cases must be. It's a unit container. Again, that's what makes it a case. But in this case, our contents available are set to no. We do it this way, so we say the items we put inside of this are not available. We don't want them quoted individually. They only go out as part of the entire package. Now, in this case, we generally use this when things are going to all be permanent. So though it is not automatically part of the preset, we are going to set the contents permanent to yes. The key in this is contents permanent doesn't mean they can or cannot be permanent. It says they're going to default permanent or not, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and save that change. Now, there won't be a storage requirement on this list under the serialized package settings, okay? So for this, we can just go and package it. Now, first though, I wanna open what we're gonna put in here are these Crown iTech 12,000 amps. So we see in here that we own 3 of these. We can go to the serial units tab and see the 3 of them listed, okay? So now we're gonna go back here and we're going to scan open our amp rack, okay? Because we have no storage requirements, it will always say green even if it is currently empty. We would go ahead and then build it in the same way. So I'm gonna go ahead and scan those amps. So we have 1, 2, and 3, and we see that all of those, because of that setting, got marked permanent automatically, okay? The key with that is now, if I go back to my amps and I reload this tab, we'll see now that it says we have 0 of these because that has to do with we made those not available. We still have them in our serial units. We're just explaining that they're inside this container and that container is a serialized package, which makes them not available, okay? Again, for the actual scanning process, we will do that in a minute. Now, there's one I want to highlight that is not actually a hybrid setting of these 2 items, but you can have a serialized storage that has both permanent and non-permanent items. For this, I'm going to use this ULXD audio rack, wireless microphone rack. So when building this, we would see that we would have hardwired receivers, and then we would have loose belt packs, handhelds, and other accessories, okay? To make it so we can have those storage requirements, we must make this serialized storage, which technically does make those receivers available, okay? But we want to be able to have that check. So we can see, if we go back to our content builder, and we close our amp rack, and then we open our audio rack, we can see here that we still have from the last show our 4 receivers, and they are permanently in here, assuming no one has pulled them apart, but it's asking us to get our belt pack handheld. I haven't added the other accessories, but it gets the demo across. I am not going to go ahead and process this one in our examples. We're going to stick to the 2 key examples, but I did want to highlight this item because it is very common for audio racks, video racks, etc. Okay, so for the last thing I want to talk about is the serialized free package, okay? For the serialized free package, my example is this rolling drape bin. A serialized free package is a case that stores empty in the warehouse and you prep it as you're prepping for the show and you pack items into it, okay? Let's go ahead and look at our structure and availability settings. We see here that again, as any container, it is tracked by serial number, yes, and it is unit container, yes. In this case, it also is contents available, no, But unlike our serialized package, this is because we are expecting it to be empty until we start prepping the show. So we don't want there to be contents in there anyway, okay? Then down here we have free pick container set as yes. That is what makes it so that this item can have items scanned into it as we go, okay? Because all of the prepping for an item like this happens during the prep for the show, we will get to that later in the webinar. So now we're going to get to talking about the packages, okay? Again, these are about ways to quickly add items, its accessories, or maybe a multi-item concept to a quote with ease, okay? Our main presets for this are serialized model with accessories. Now note, you can have non-serialized model with accessories, but that's much less common, okay? Also then a virtual package, or lastly, a virtual model, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and go back to our live Flex site. So for this, we're gonna start with our serialized model with accessory. For this example, I'm gonna go back to my VRX speakers from the earlier that we've already created the case for, okay? We're gonna pop open the speaker here, and we're going to go ahead and look at our structure and availability settings. For this, again, we chose that this is a serialized model with accessories, though it does work with non-serialized. The key other is that the second one, our model contents are set to yes. Now, the description of this is a clearer example that it's with accessories. We're saying this has items that are accessories that we want to show up automatically, that we don't want to charge our client for, but we need to make sure get prepped or packed, and they can be added as model contents to this item, okay? That's the key in our settings. So for that, that means we get this contents tab. We can go to the contents tab and then set what we want to go along with this, okay? Now, in this example, we're going to keep this simple, and we're going to say that this virtual company always sets up their 932s on the floor, on sticks, in pairs, okay? They may occasionally do singles, but we're not hanging things. So what we're going to do in our example here is we're going to say that we're going to always get per speaker 0.5 of a jumper. We only need one for every two we quote. We're going to want some speaker stands, again, 0.5, one for every two. And we're going to go ahead and list the case here. Again, this is a 2-pack, so one for every two speakers at 0.5. Now the case is not required, but it can be helpful to keep you from having an orphan scan and to keep the relationships of this understood. Okay. Now that we are moving to actual packages, and this is about how to put items on the quote, let's go ahead and add these to a quote. So I've gone ahead and made this quote earlier. Now for this, we're going to add these using the auto mode on here. Okay. So I'm going to come to my speakers and add them. And for this example, I'm going to say we're quoting 4 speakers, two sets of mains of pairs. Okay. So in this, we will see that it added those 2 of each of those items, the jumper, the stand, and the case, 2 of each, that they are not pulling any pricing information, and that they have become automatically line muted, okay? So that the customer is still only gonna see that we're charging from the speakers and that price, but we make sure our staff knows, hey, these are the other accessories that need to get prepped and sent out the door, okay? So that's the way that serialized model with accessory works for us. Okay. Now, I want to temporarily circle back to our serialized package because, as I said, that is the actual item that you will quote to the customer, as opposed to the serialized storage is not the item you quote. So for this, we're going to come back to our Crown VRAC and throw this on here. And for this, we see that we've added no children items. And again, we have to do that because we made those amps not available. So we can't list and remind which amps are going to come with this rack because of their lack of availability. We can even show that by individually throwing them on here and pretending we were going to do that. And we see that the system says you don't have those available because they are part of this system and are only allowed to go out as part of that package. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and remove those from this. All right, so now we're going to move to the next package, which is a virtual package. A virtual package is when I want to communicate one line and one price to my customer, but what I am communicating isn't a single item, but a group of items or a concept of a combination of items. Okay? My favorite example of this is a projection screen. So we're going to go into our video in our screens. And so I have here this AV Stumpful 9x16 screen with dress kit. Okay. So for this, let's go ahead and look at our availability settings, or our structure and availability. Again, as we said, is a virtual package. So because of this virtual package, we see now that our tracked by serial number is no, but instead down at the bottom, it says, yes, it is a virtual item. Note that those will never both be yes, okay? Once something is virtual, it's not real anymore, so you can't track it in any way, okay? What we say then for this item is instead, it is made up by the sum of its accessories. So we have that model contents turned on to yes, saying this has accessories, and those accessories are actually what makes up the item itself, okay? So for this, we can go to our Contents tab. Now, because of the amount of items, I've gone ahead and pre-built this, but we see here that I've added the accessories that we would need to prep in this. We've got our surfaces, our frame pieces, legs, our dress kit hardware and fabric. We've got our bolts and our cases. Again, cases are not required, but I do think it is helpful. In these cases are like our speaker case. They are serialized storage, where they storage requirements that would include these other parts and pieces. I've gone ahead and built those and packaged them up together before the demo, but we will be processing them later. Okay. So the one show how this goes on to the quote. So we're going to go ahead and close it and this, but we're going to go ahead and quote this item. So again, adding it on auto, we're just going to have the one screen here. Okay. All right, for this, we see again, we added this one line, we're communicating to our customer on the price, and then all the rest of these are children that line muted, so they will not see them, they will not be charged for them. The key difference between this and our serialized model with accessory is that we see in our conflicts tab, this space is blank, because the system knows this is not actually a thing. It is made up by the sum of its parts. Now, if we collapse it, you'll see that it has the green or potentially red if it thinks there's any of its children missing. But if it's open, it just looks at them individually because this is not an actual piece of equipment. Okay. So now, first thing we need to hit is the virtual model. Now, virtual models are actually very open-ended, and there's a giant amount of options that we could hit, and we don't have time to hit all of them. So for today, I'm just going to hit one example that I find helpful. That's going to be drape per linear feet. So we go here, and I have this black pipe and drape per linear foot, 17 feet tall. Okay. So we're going to go again and look at our model and our settings for this. So we notice as a virtual model, everything is no except for virtual item. Okay, that means we don't get any special tabs or columns to help us. What it is instead, it is entirely built via suggestions. Now, I'm not going to get deep into the way suggestions work today. That could be its own webinar, but I will highlight these items. Oh, and I've already added this. I didn't mean to. Well, we'll just get rid of it really quick and then put them back in. Okay, so for this, under our idea that this is a virtual model where it represents 1 foot of linear drape, that we go to our parts to add this in. Now in this system, my we'll make this a little bigger so we can see. My drape is set up as 15-foot wide and 17-foot tall panels that we use to make 10-foot sections of drape with fullness. Okay, so to do our 10 feet sections, we want to add this as 0.1 panel per foot of drape, because that means 10 of those will get us 1 panel. Okay. We want to do the same for our crossbar. That's the same math in here. Then for our uprights, we always have to cap off at the end. Now, we can never make our math perfect for all situations for this, because if we do 100 linear feet, but it's one section, well, then we need 11 bars. But if instead that's split into 3 sections, then we need 13 bars, uprights. And so we can't ever make the math perfect. In this example for this system, I'm going to put it to 0.12 and let that work. Now we need to set our suggestion types. And again, I said I'm not going to get into the details, but I do want to highlight that I can select all of these and I can bulk edit these and go here. And I've added in this system this generic one called contents no charge. Again, I want these to work very similar to the virtual package contents where the customer doesn't see them and they're not charged for them. But in this case, they are optional where I have the ability to control the numbers before it happens. It doesn't go on there automatically. Okay, so we can see now that those have all been updated. Now I've chosen intentionally not to add the pins or the bases because in this, I also made this upright a non-serialized model with accessories and says that every time one upright goes, one pin and one base goes. So we'll see how those will get added automatically and do not have to be part of this list. Okay, so again, we're going to go back to our quote for this and go ahead and quote our pipe and drape. In this case, we're going to say that we're doing 30 feet. This is maybe for one room. We've got a screen and we're going to flank the rest of the room and the screen. So we're going to go ahead and say, okay there. We're saying it's one section of drape. And so our math is actually accurate this time. But again, you'll always have to check and see if sometimes it's not right. We're going to go ahead and select all of them because our math is correct and say accept. And we'll see again where they added as a child. They're not adding price. This item, because it's a non-serialized model with accessories, has still the children items here. And there, no price and all line muted. So again, I'm communicating one line to the customer, but I'm getting all of these parts and pieces on here to be able to make sure my warehouse staff knows what has to be prepped for the show to make this happen. Okay, so that's covering all of our examples in this. So now that we've built this, let's go ahead and process how we would scan these out and how they're affected in that way. Okay, for this, we'll go over to Flex 4. So I've pre-made a pull sheet that is exactly the same as the one we just made here. So we see our list of items if they're all collapsed. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start through from the top. Okay, we see that we need 4 of these VRX 932 speakers, but we know that those store in a case. So we go and get the case, and we're going to go ahead. If I can get my scanner. And scan the first case. We see there that because we processed that it has speakers, jumper, and case, it's checked off those lines, but not the speaker stands. And then we can go to the next one. And we see now that it has checked off all of those. We've met all of those requirements, okay? We can go ahead and say we're prepping the speaker stands. We're going to pretend they're loose. It's not really critical. For this example, they're not part of the container or the package, but we'll just get that cleaned up. Now, for our serialized package, instead, again, we didn't list our individual amps because they can't be shown for availability. But now, when we go to process these, we'll see that the amp rack is checked off, but if we go over to the manifest, that it has added the individual amps to this to let us know, hey, these are inside this rack and they are traveling. They were just not listed before, okay? I also want to back up really quick and show that though on our pull sheet list, we have our parent child being speaker and then accessories and case. On the manifest, we have the actual understanding of their storage and organization of case holding 2 speakers and a jumper, case holding 2 speakers and a jumper, okay? So we fix that relationship the way it really is But this was about communicating to our customer, while this is about understanding how it's actually stored on our truck, okay? So now we're gonna move down to our screen. Now, the important thing here that we see is that on the virtual item itself, it's gray instead of black and does not have the preceding 0 like all of the other items. Again, the system knows I am made up of the sum of my children. I'm not an actual item, okay? So now we know that this takes our 3 cases to package together. So we go and get our cases for this screen. So we're gonna go here and scan our screen kit. Okay, we're gonna scan our dress kit. We see as we're checking these off that we're getting a lot of check marks, but the main item has our caution symbol of saying, I am partially taken care of, but not completely. We're still missing some of the parts and pieces, okay? Now we're gonna hit our leg kit. We see then at that point that it checks off everything, including the virtual item. But if we go over to our manifest, again, we've never actually scanned that virtual item on here. We just have our screen kit with its accessories, our dress kit with its accessories, and our leg kit with its accessories. But the system knows that means what it takes to build that virtual package is on the quote, is on the pull sheet, is on the manifest. So we're taken care of, okay? So our last thing here is our drape, okay? Again, as a virtual item, it says, hey, I'm made up of the sum of my children. So I'm just a gray thing of saying 30, okay? But we have to do this. Now in this, these don't pre-store. Instead, I'm gonna go get my rolling drape bin and start to prep. Now, let's say in this that actually I'm gonna put the bases in there, the pins, and the drape panels. I've got enough room for that. So I'm gonna first go here and get my drape bin, and I'm gonna scan it open. We'll see here that it's asking me if I want to go into free pick mode. Now I will highlight that this is one prompt that I very commonly tell people it's fine to don't prompt you next time, because you would always want to go into free pick mode. That's why you made this a free pick container, okay? So we'll see by doing that, we now have this red bar here to remind us that anything we scan right now is going inside of this case, okay? So now, and we haven't changed anything on the front because we haven't met any new requirements, but we get our understanding of that structure of how things are going to be going on the truck, okay? So for this, we're going to go ahead then and scan our bases. I've made these non-serialized, so we have 4. We're going to hit our pins and 4. And then we're going to say that we put our drape in this bin. We have 3 of those panels, okay? Now, when we are done filling this case, we can either just click the close container button, or we can scan the case again, and that will close it. We see there that that container has been sealed. Now, again, if we look at the manifest tab and we go down to the bottom, that we see we have that rolling drape bin that was not on our list. We weren't expecting it, but then these parts and pieces are understood as being inside of it, so that if when we run a report to have to a shipping manifest, we know where these are and they can be easier to find. On this little show we're faking, it's not that big of a deal, but when you have a large show with 1 or more semi-trailers, that's pretty important to be able to understand where equipment traveled from, okay? So really quick, to just finish this up, we're gonna go ahead and just say that we are packing our crossbars. I've made these non-serialized, and we are packing our uprights, okay? We can go ahead and finalize this. So now we send that on the truck, we send it out to the show, make that happen. So here's the key. I want to highlight first, and I'm going to do this in Flex 5, that first, while these items are out and on the show, it still keeps that structure of understanding of how they packaged, okay? So if I scan open my case, we still understand that this case has these items inside of it, okay? So we see again that this understands it's on this show, but we still understand that tracking, so that if some reason before the event happened, we can still remember. But we mostly want to focus on this for these speakers, okay? The speaker case, okay? So we're going to go to our return manifest on this, and we're going to pop it open. And so we see on our return manifest how it is organized in the same way that it ended up on the manifest from our scanning. The order we scanned, the parent and child relationship from the scan, okay? So the key on our serialized storage for our speaker cases is that we know we've got 2 speakers here and 2 speakers here, but all of that will come out of the cases on the event, okay? And so then those speakers, those cases will go into storage, will go put away. And when they come back, there's little to no chance that we're going to guarantee that we put the same cases back in the same place. Now, at 2, maybe there's a little bit of a chance. At a larger show, there's less of a chance. And overall, we don't really care. It's not a big deal, but we don't want to make assumptions on that. So when this comes back from our event, and we go and scan in our case, you'll see that it only processes that case and does not process any of those items. This could have gone out on a rental and someone sent you back an empty case. You've got to open it and double check. Are there speakers? Are they my speakers? Which speakers are they? Okay. So we then have to individually process each of those. But the one thing I do want to highlight is if we now go back to that case and reload it, on the contents, on the current way of doing it, we see that it's now back in our warehouse and has been emptied. This is what we refer to as digitally exploding the case. Anything that is not permanent is assumed of, I don't know for sure anything, and so I'm going to kick that out. So that does mean we now have to go back to here. We have to scan in the individual items, and then we have to re-kit our case the same way we did at the beginning of the demo. Okay, so I'm just going to hit 2 of these really quick. For example, now in this case, because I don't have actual speakers in here, I happen to hit the exact same ones because that's what my cheat sheet has. But there's the complete chance we could hit other different ones. And then we have to go back to the case and go ahead and kit it. Now this does make it so we feel like we're doing a double dipping process on the return, but it saves us from scanning on the outbound scan, okay? So alternatively, I want to just talk briefly about our serialized package, okay, our AMP rack. So for that, again, I'm going to scan open our rack. We're going to do this here, and we see again, it's on the show and has these 3 items, but they are marked as permanent. So when we come to our event and we scan it in, they all come along. It assumes that nobody pulled out a screwdriver and tore that rack apart. It's possible, but it's not likely. And so then if we go back to the item and we reload it, that our contents are still there and they've all been returned back to our warehouse, okay? And that would just be kind of rinsed and repeated through our other storage cases, because again, these is storage, all of our screen kits are storage. And then the only key difference here is at the end for our rolling drape bin, again, this is expected to go empty. And so we're not expecting any of these items back in it anyway. So we just need to scan and double check, did all of these parts and pieces get back, okay? So that's the key part of the demonstration for today.